I'll open the meeting of the Economic Development Communications Committee meeting for today, the open portion. We have a quorum, so there's no need to co-opt the non-existent people sitting here waiting to be co-opted. Confirmation of the minutes of the open portion, Thursday 29 July. If someone could move, they be accepted. Thank you, Councillor Dudder. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. That's accepted. Consideration of supplementary items, we have none. Conflicts of interest on the open. There being none and there being no items to transfer from the open or vice versa, I'll move to the one substantive item, the report in relation to Business Events Tasmania, the annual funding submission to this council. There is a report on file, and I'll ask first off perhaps the Director to give us an introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, we have Marty Craig here, the CEO of Business Events Tasmania, to actually give us a presentation. So Marty, if you'd like to come up forward. Certainly in making this recommendation, staff have given this a lot of thought in the context of how we perceive the tourism and events and hospitality industries and where it's at in light of hopefully COVID recovery. I think my observations are that Business Events TAS work is very much about the future. It's not so much about the current, but Marnie, you can take us through that in a moment. But certainly in making a recommendation to return to full funding, the office or the staff thinking has been it is about creating that pipeline of events and activities that will come into the city. And to be able to achieve that, of course, Business Events TAS do need a level of sustainable funding to help them undertake that. So that's why the recommendation is before you, Chair. But if you're content, we can invite Marnie to take us through a presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Marnie. Thanks, Director.
Thank you very much for having me today. So obviously the presentation format annually is fairly simplistic. This year it's slightly different in that we're in certainly different times. So probably just to touch, I think all of you present are aware of our role. So our role in business events is we're the highest yielding visitor in the visitor economy. So we're on average 3 times the daily spend of a leisure visitor. So that's our place in the visitor economy. We also drive visitation outside peak periods. So what that means is most of our activity occurs in the city between May and October. Delegates stay beyond the business event. So we know through our research that a conference is an average 3 days and delegates stay for an average of 6.1 days. The repeat tourism, the delegates' intent is 55% intend to return within 2 years. And very importantly, it's actually quite significant about trade and investment opportunities. So it's not just about visitation. It's very much about, we have a program that we run at Business Events that focuses in with the government and the trade and investment opportunities. So that's about strategic conferencing and bringing conferences that align and connect people. What we do at Business Events Tasmania, so we perform 2 roles. So we have a direct sales bidding activity. So we're responsible for about 50% of the business events that you see in Hobart in a direct bidding capacity. Our other role, which I guess leads into the other 50%, is about marketing the destination more broadly to our sector. You know, we very much greatly appreciate the support of the city, and we really value the close relationship we have with the staff from the City of Hobart and working together. And we've just recently had a meeting with the Visitor Centre to talk about opportunities for connecting the centre in as a pre and post function or booking facility. Last year with COVID, our last funding cycle, we were able to access the federal funding through JobKeeper and the small business support. So we reached out with our relationship and contacted the city and suggested, given that we couldn't bring conferences into the city and we knew I guess the priorities and the pressures that everyone was facing, to reduce the funding to 50%, and that was obviously available through the federal government funding. I don't think there's anyone that's escaped the effects of COVID. Certainly our sector has been hit as one of the most significant. So basically it was shut down overnight. Mass gathering restrictions and border closures do continue to impact on the recovery. And our priority was initially to focus on getting as many conferences rescheduled. So we rescheduled, as you can see, I think it was about 64 conferences into Hobart. As the time went on, it started higher than that, but as the time went on, obviously there were some cancellations. The majority of the business that we saw cancel was actually international business. We had a really strong international program that year around Antarctic science in particular, and with international cycles it's a 3-year, so we will revisit that, but they needed to cancel out. Business Events Tasmania as an organisation, we're a very small organisation, we have 10 employees, and unlike any other business, we needed to look at our business and identify ways that we could sustain our organisation to come through what would be a difficult time. We are a membership organisation, so we needed to look at ways that we could manage our expenditure and mitigate our risks. So staff reduced hours, exhausted leave entitlements, we had an internal restructure and we didn't replace all of our positions. We did waive our membership fees for that year, and once again we could do this because of the federal funding, but also we just realised the engagement of our members is critical. Without members, we're not selling anything. So the positive news is that there's a lot of great opportunities that have come out of COVID for Tasmania with business events. So a lot of new opportunities plays perfectly into where the market sits for Hobart. So we've had obviously a number of new hotel developments open. So we have 2 markets. We have an association market, which is our predominant market and always has been. But with the new hotel developments, the corporate incentive market becomes an opportunity for Tasmania. It was accommodation availability and quality that always held this market back, and obviously with the new hotels. And on top of that, there's a lot of corporate incentive groups. So there's a lot of staff rewards, and I guess a lot of franchisees and those sorts of groups. And they would normally travel internationally, and obviously that's not an opportunity. So Tasmania has become a real destination of choice for this group, and that's certainly an opportunity that has arisen from COVID. Our bidding has returned at a fairly high level, and our conversion is high. So we've obviously, with the latest Delta outbreak, we've seen just in the last few weeks, this is we're on the roller coaster again. So we've got very strong pipelines and very strong lead and conversion. But when borders close, everybody goes into hibernation, and we have a really high volume of pending business, which people won't make decisions until they can see the clear path out. The good news is that we've been working, obviously mass gatherings and restrictions are very important in this environment to keep our community safe, and we have been able to demonstrate a safe return to business events. So we work very closely with the government and public health to ensure that we can provide venue-based plans for a COVID safe. So we had this Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists Congress that took place in May, and they actually had 850 delegates attend that conference. They thought that they would probably only get about 400, but Tasmania proved a really appealing destination. So that was held safely at the Grand Chancellor. This is our pipeline, just to give you a bit of an idea. So what this is our confirmed and our pending. So this is activity that we have done a specific bid on a piece of business. Generally we're between 2 and 3 destinations when they're at this level. So we have 45 confirmed for the remainder of the financial year, The majority of that, we have had quite a lot for the end of this year, but as the New South Wales and Melbourne situation extend, they are now starting to push into next year. So a lot of this activity is now starting to group in the first half of next year. So there's 45 conferences there. And this is just business events. As I said before, we only represent about 50% of the market in our statistics here. And we also have 43 pending. I would expect that pending business will really now start to shuffle towards the 22-23 year. And we do work fairly in advance on 2 to 3 years and beyond. So they're the sorts of numbers that we have solid, locked in, and a fairly high conversion. Our conversion at the moment is about 57%. In a normal environment, it would be actually around 40. So we're confident that that pending business will convert. And as you can see, there's significant room nights and economic impact. These are the years beyond. In this latest budget cycle, we were able to lobby the government around the Business Event Attraction Fund. So this is a fund that it doesn't impact on our organisation's funding, but what it is, it's used as an incentivisation. This is really important in a very competitive market. We now have markets like Melbourne and Sydney vying for domestic business when they typically use their bid funds for international business. To give you an idea, ours is 2.4 over 4 years. Those sorts of states have 10 million over 1 year, so it's quite different, but you know, that plays into our positioning for Tasmania. It's not about mass volume, it's about the right type of business. We've created some tools throughout the COVID year that we believe will really help our marketplace. We did a customer journey. We talked to our customers about what they needed, how their business had changed. So we've created an interactive city map. So what it is, it shows one of the unique selling propositions for Tasmania is that the walkability of our city, the ease and access once you're within Hobart. And so that certainly positions us really well in a domestic marketplace. So we've created a map that showcases all of our facilities. There's 360-degree filming of the conference centres and some of the hotels, as well as all the experience-based businesses that are part of it. Shows how far it is to walk and how far it is to drive. And we've launched a new website which has a much greater search functionality and usability, and also we're just about to launch a new bidding tool. So we've just been sort of looking at our assets. In a business that's very small, it's very difficult to innovate, and we've used the time wisely to be able to do that. BET activities to aid the recovery. So the brand, as I mentioned, is proving very appealing. We're committed to the T21 recovery plan. As part of that plan, we're actually have the largest FMIL program we've ever had over the next 12 months. So in June we had our first event where we hosted 17 key clients. 7 of them additional were from Melbourne, and they have been rescheduled to a later program. And so it will see us bring 100 clients into the city to showcase them on what Tasmania can do. They're typically people that haven't been here before. We've already bid on $3 million worth of business from that June FMIL, and we expect to see quite a lot more. And I guess it's a double impact to the economy because it also supports us in developing our product around the city, particularly for the corporate incentive market, where we can work with experience-based operators and small businesses around Hobart. And we have some funds through the Austrade Regional Recovery Fund to support us in doing that. And obviously taking the pressure off those businesses, we would normally be asking for free of charge activities. So it's been really great to be able to work with that and show what we have to offer. The recovery for the longer term, and this is at the core of our strategy in business events, it's all about the Tasmanian Ambassador Program. So that's where we work with key industry sectors, the university, scientific and research and medical associations to really bring in those strategically valuable conferences that align with our focus at the moment is Antarctic, renewable, the green and renewable economy, healthcare, social assistance. So we work, and this creates opportunities for, you know, our researchers and our academics to showcase what they're doing and what they're working on, as well as promote the city globally. This just gives you an idea of our sales funnel. So as I said, you know, the optimistic picture is that we actually have a really strong pipeline and funnel of work, and that will aid our recovery. So we'd really started to see a strong recovery in the last few months, and obviously that's just been stalled. So that's what we've got in the pipeline at the moment for Hobart. So there's a lot of business there. Our future, so the competitiveness has increased for the next couple of years with international borders closed. The board at BET has just approved a loss budget. We don't ordinarily move into a loss situation, but what we did through COVID was reserve as much as we could and use the federal funding wisely to position ourselves to come out of this. You know, we're a very small organisation. The way that our business model is set up is that the state and the local government funding supports the fixed costs of our organisation, and our membership fees pay for our sales and marketing activity. Our board understand that if we don't invest now, we've got a baseline reserve where we can't go beyond, which is the funds that are required if we were in a situation to wind our business up. So they're, I guess, maxing out on that position to take us to our baseline. But if they've realised if we don't invest in this next year, the impacts for the city will be, and for the state, will be long term, so 5 to 7 years, where we won't see the economic return. So our, you know, to give you an idea of our budget, Tim mentioned before around the funding. So to give you an idea, so we've based that loss to our base reserve on a full 100% return to the City of Hobart funding, and also a return of our membership fees. At the moment, our membership is going well and it's very optimistic, but there's a lot of pressure right now on a lot of small businesses. So obviously once, I guess that's something we're waiting and watching closely to see how it goes, because that has a significant impact on the activities we can perform. But we're motivated and optimistic about obviously making those sales pipelines come to fruition. This just gives, I guess, some idea of the sentiment of our sector. The business event sector has sort of been a bit of a shining light in the visitor economy through this period. So Tourism Australia has a business event Australia department, and they've done a lot of research over the time. There's been a lot of concern over what impact, long-term impacts there would be on the sector. But as you can see there, the statistics for intent are quite strong. A lot of the Australian businesses are seeing business events as the opportunity to rebuild, I guess, their corporate culture and reconnect as we emerge out of this, which is obviously part and parcel of what we've all been through with working from home. So really strong intentions, and if anything, they're saying that they intend to do more than before. What we are seeing is that it's more, but it's smaller. So it plays perfectly into the Tasmanian strategy, where we don't have huge venue capabilities. So as I said before, we're very grateful. We really enjoy a fantastic relationship with the staff at the City of Hobart, and that's the funding commitment which is we're asking for the financial year. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thanks, Marnie. I'll open the item for discussion.
No, I've always supported this organisation. I was actually a former chairman many moons ago, so it does well.
Councillor Dodder.
Thank you for that presentation, quite full and in detail. Just a few questions. With regards to the venue, if you have more than 1,000 guests coming or participants, is there a hall or venue available, or are there limited capacity?
So it's a good question. A lot of people talk about that sort of size equation, and it's different for Tasmania, for both Hobart and Launceston. So what our market make decisions on is different in both parts of our market. So the association will make a decision purely based at first on the size of the facility. So the size of the conferencing, the trade space that's available. So trade space is very important because that's where they have all of their sponsors. And so that will be the first place. So our maximum capacity that we promote in Tasmania is around 1,100. There are larger sizes, but people have to split off into different venues. But it's not really the business. So that's where we've really looked at the market and what we're strong at and what suits what our city wants, and that's where we see. So our strategy, our current strategy, which has another 12 months on it, is for Hobart prior to COVID was about growing delegate numbers by targeting those larger 700 to 1,100 pax conferences. And we hear from operators and restaurants all over the city, that's great. Corporate incentive, it's 80 to 100. It's about accommodation, it's about getting available rooms, and that's where that market sees it. So, but the thing that you have is with both markets, if you grew in size, you still have to have off-site dinners for associations, you still have to have experiences, and there's all of those other parts of the activity that we're not really, we're not ready for, our product isn't ready for at the moment. So we've always played in that space that we know we do.
Can I ask two more questions? Thank you, Chair. The other one is, again, you mentioned that there's about 55% who have intentions of coming back.
Yes.
Is there a figure of actual returns?
We don't have any research that does support that. So our research is very minimal. We're actually working with Events Tasmania at the moment to do a new research project. So those statistics come from interviewing the delegates. We don't have any research that follows up to see if they came from a business event. That loop hasn't been closed. So it is just intent.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
And then the final question is with regards to competition. With the size of the city of Hobart, do you know figures with regards to other regions where you are competing or who you are competing with?
Yeah, sure. So it does change. So I've been with business events for 3.5 years, and so when I first started, our competitors were predominantly Adelaide and Queensland, and then Adelaide and Queensland grew their facilities, started new convention centres, so they moved into the international marketplace. We then our major competitors were the Northern Territory and Western Australia. So we moved more into that space. We compete a lot with Northern Territory, although now they're becoming less of a competitor. And we're sort of competing with the Hunter Valley, the Barossa Valley, and some parts of Queensland again, like Cairns, that are not in the international space. So it does shift, and because what happens as product evolves, then they look for the international markets. But now it's everyone because international borders are closed, so it's significant. Yeah.
So if we look at, say, 2024-25, how do you start to identify where you're going to do your pitches? How do you identify who's coming?
So we have a CRM, and what we do is we capture, so all of those leads and under development. So in that pipeline, under development means that someone in my team has engaged with that conference and they're discussing that and they know the rotational pattern. So they all have rotational patterns. So we've captured the rotational pattern, whether it's every year or 2 years, whether they have, a lot of boards have rules around it's a capital city then a regional area. So we've captured all that information. So we know the cycle. And so that we're engaging and talking to them regularly around when their next opportunity is. So we can see which businesses, and then what we do is we target specific trade sectors, that we're looking at, and we look at size. So we narrow our pool down. So our pipeline is business that can fit within the city, so not exceeding the 1100, and what timeline they have when their next conference is available, because that's how they all work.
Are you going back to people who've been here in the last 3 or 4 years, given that they may have difficulties going elsewhere?
We always go back, yeah. So we rework that. We have existing relationships, and then we're looking at new business opportunities as well. The most common thing we actually find we get a lot of repeat business, and certainly we've changed our sales style, so we've got that part, which is that relationship selling, and also through familials and site inspections, we're bringing a lot more people into the city that haven't been here before. The barriers include weather, size, perception, access perception, and we know when we bring them in here, we have a 50% chance of converting them, so we increase our chance. So so we do rework a lot of that, yeah.
So one of your major costs is entertaining them on the checkout trips, or looking after them?
So one of our major costs is site inspections, definitely. So we basically fly them in, and we host them for 2 days, where we take them to every venue and activity that they could think. It's different to a familial. A site inspection is very much, I have a piece of business, and I'm looking specifically at the venue to see if it can fit, and looking at what off-site activities. A familial, which is the program that we're rolling through the regional recovery funding, is about bringing them in, and they're people that aren't looking at Tasmania, have never been here before, and we've qualified that, or generally not looking at a specific piece of business, and that's where we show them and what they can do here. So that's sort of really the high-end wow experience while they're here.
And is a lot of your work going to different destinations and talking to people in their home base?
We call that our in-market activities, so we tend to do that. We know we get a much higher conversion if we get them here, but obviously from a cost perspective, we attend trade shows, and we go and do sales calls throughout Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane are the main bases where we have our client base.
Okay. All right, thank you. Nothing further? Have someone move the recommendation?
I move.
Thanks, Councillor. So I have a recommendation in accordance with the papers. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, say aye. Against, that's carried. So thanks, Marnie.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
It's a pleasure, said. We'll go to council in 2 weeks' time.
Monday.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee action status report. Item 7.1. Someone prepared to move that?
I'm pleased to report, Chair, we've got it down to the last item, and that will come off this meeting. So you have bragging rights, Chair, as the first committee to have completed the action report.
All right, that's good. Questions without notice on the open? Nothing, so I'll get someone to move. We go into the closed. Councillor Dudder?
Yes.
Thank you.